Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this August 5th meeting of the Northfield Township Planning Commission to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, I'll call the roll. Mr. Roman? Here. Mr. Kuzno? Here. Ms. Chick? Here. Mr. Dignan?
Present.
And I am here. We have Mr. Stanalajczo and Mr. Iaquinto are absent with notice, so they're not here tonight. We do have a quorum. You have the agenda in front of you.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the agenda. I need to add something, though, right here at the beginning. There's been a little back and forth about the last minutes that we've witnessed, and my preference is to have them filled out a little more. I passed out some information that is provided to us by the Michigan Township Association on how they recommend minutes be done, and I would ask that Lisa produce the minutes as we're used to seeing them with more detail, like the public who's come to speak to us and some of the discussion that we have entertained during our meeting. Now, I know that Lisa's pretty good at taking these minutes, and so I don't have any concerns that the minutes are going to get us into trouble, by us discussing things. And we can always delete those if there's anything in there that might be construed that way. But for my preferences, we have a little more detail in our minutes. And so I'm throwing that out there to discuss with you. The Open Meetings Act does not prohibit preparing a public body from preparing a more detailed set of minutes of its public meetings if it so chooses to do so. But the Open Meetings Act requires that what must be in the minutes, at a minimum, must show the date, time, place, members present, members absent, any decisions made at an open meeting to the public, and the purpose or purposes for which a closed session is held. The minutes must include all roll call votes taken at the meeting. So that's the minimum. We have gone beyond that. There is some concern about that on certain members' parts, and specifically Mr. Stanalajczo, kind of cutting it to the barest minimum. And so we need some direction to give to Ms. Lemble tonight on our how the minutes will be taken. So, Mr. Dignan, you have a comment.
Madam Chair, I'd ask that we look at this under a policy and review and discussion at maybe our next meeting. Allow Ms. Lemble to continue as she has, and give each board member time to really contemplate this and look at the various sources of information. Maybe the township could provide us with a legal decision they received from their attorney. I think it was either last year or maybe earlier this year. I don't know. I know it was a decision that came from Paul Burns' office, correct?
It was a recommendation from the office that the written minutes, as we had discussed at that time, can be used in a court of law. So whatever is in there, once they're approved by the board, is a legal document.
Okay, and while I do appreciate the MTA guidelines, their guidelines, but I'd like to also have time to compare those to the likes of our own bylaws, and as I said, the recommendation from the attorney, and bring this up under policy review and discussion at our next meeting.
Okay. So, Ms. Check, did you have any more comments about it?
I don't have a problem with the way we've been getting the minutes. I understand the legal issues about it, and we might want to talk about amending some of the things that we do, but just the action items I don't think are enough, only because some people don't get to watch it, some people don't get to come to the meetings, and sometimes that's their only reference of what's going on in the township. So,
okay. Do we have any comments down here by Mr. Kuzno or Mr. Roman?
Again, I don't have an issue regarding how the minutes have been done, but I agree that this probably should come up under a different section of the agenda at this time.
Okay. Why don't we get enough microphones? I mean, we have enough microphones for all three of you, so let's kind of move them all down and everybody have their own. Mr. St. Amour, go ahead. Okay.
And I understand what we're talking about here is that these minutes from last meeting were generated by our secretary and not by Ms. Lemble because Ms. Lemble was not here.
Correct.
And we're asking ourselves whether we want to continue on with the previous arrangement or have the secretary do all of the note-taking or the agenda, I mean, not the minute-taking during the meetings. Is this correct?
No. Well, we're talking about partly about getting these particular minutes revised by Ms. Lemble to reflect more of what happened in the meeting, and then discuss under policy review and discussion at our next meeting our general thoughts about how we want our minutes prepared into the future. So, Mr. Roman?
That's a good clarification. You're talking about the last set of minutes that we had.
Right.
You want those redone?
I do.
Okay.
I do believe we're required to vote on those at our immediate next meeting.
I don't believe that's
In order for
true. They're supposed to be made available to the public within 5 days after we adopt them, and we're not required to adopt them at our next meeting.
Well, if we don't adopt them, they automatically become adopted.
I didn't read that anywhere in any of the materials I've read. So, Mr.
I'd
Mr.
like to ask if you have any clarification for us on that.
Yeah,
As a township manager.
My understanding is that they're not an official 7 minutes until they are done.
Right.
And
Okay.
so I would agree with
The chair?
Madam Chair. They do have to be available, I do think 7 days.
This says 8 days right in
8
here.
days.
8
Yeah.
business days.
8 days after, they have to be available for inspection.
Right.
We have them available usually within a few days. So, and typically they go online, not mistaken, they often go online even before they're voted.
Right.
Right. This,
Right.
just for clarification, it says in this document we just received that the unapproved minutes must be made available to the public within 8 business days following the meeting. That's all it says.
I think
Right.
if I could maybe help clarify, we had this debate.
Could you come up here since the public can't hear this?
So we had this debate at the board of trustees a number of years ago. It was probably about a year and a half ago, wasn't it? So let's sort of remove the issue of the bylaws for a second, because that adds another layer of complexity to it. But the minutes themselves. Minutes only need to, as I think somebody indicated, they only need to say legally the time, the date, the location, what was discussed, which can be as short as your agenda, and the action items taken. The attorney did give an opinion that there should be some caution because the minutes become the official record of what happens at the Planning Commission. Okay? And so if the back and forth debate becomes the official record, then that becomes admissible in court. And there are times when, and I'm not taking a value judgment, because I'm not up here to say you should do one or the other, but what we brought it to the Board of Trustees to have that understanding and that debate. There are times when those conversations can have implications and can have liability implications for the township and legal implications. And so the township board made a conscious choice, not only for that reason, but for other reasons, made a conscious choice to pare down the minutes. We used to have a significant lengthy set of minutes. There used to be minutes and notes We got rid of the notes, and we just went with the minutes, and it still has some conversation and some dialogue in there, but it's not essentially word for word. Most communities would say that minutes should not be a word-for-word transcript of a conversation. Now, I don't know what the MTA said. I don't have it in front of me. I'd like to take a look at it.
Right. It's in the manual that we ordered.
Yeah, I mean, so the MTA is basically saying, summary of the request, the applicant's reason to support the request. Minutes need not be verbatim, but should contain enough detail to reconstruct the meeting's events. I will tell you that, you know, sometimes reading stuff like this, you ask 5 people at the MTA and they may give you 5 different answers, because the interpretation of something like this could be like that. So, you know, can you reconstruct the events by identifying what the agenda was and what the vote was, and 1 or 2 sentences about the conversation? Does it need to be 3, 4, 5, 6 paragraphs about the conversation? That's the policy consideration for the township, for the planning commission.
Sure.
Okay.
What you ought to do, though, and if I may suggest, and I think either Ken or Trustee Chick brought it up, you ought to have either Paul Burns come and give you his thoughts, or maybe some kind of communication.
Okay. And I'm fine with that, totally.
Madam
Mr.
Chair,
Dignan.
I did happen to look under Michigan Case Law 15.269, which is referred to in the book here, and the one thing that I was referring to is the area where I was speaking of the next meeting. It says the minutes shall include, you know, any roll call votes taken at the meeting. The public body shall make any corrections in the minutes at the next meeting after the meeting to which the minutes refer. The public body shall make corrected minutes available at or before the next subsequent meeting after correction. The corrected minutes shall show both the original entry and the correction. So that's straight out of Michigan case law. You have one opportunity to correct your minutes, and that is at the immediate next meeting. Huh? That's Michigan case law 15.269. Yeah, that's right out of the Open Meetings Act. And you know, with that reference, and you know, we ran into a question about this at the school district, and you know, if you don't correct your minutes at the next meeting, you don't get a second chance.
Mm-hmm.
That's the minutes. You don't get to correct it, and any corrections must be, you know, marked and then shown both the corrected and the original version.
Okay.
So I know that's a little different from what we've done.
Well,
Meaning,
maybe on a rare
meaning I don't
occasion.
think we show that we
Right.
changed a misspelling or something like that.
Well, no, we do get the marked up version. There's the draft, and then there's the marked up version.
And it
both
becomes
of
the
those
official?
versions, and it becomes the official. So
Okay, perfect.
when you see them, you'll see crossed out words, and it'll be replaced.
Right. You just have
It
one
sounds like-
chance.
So we can't vote to postpone it to the next meeting to get them corrected. Well, that's the last time I'm going to let them do minutes.
Well, it is
Unfortunately,
his
we can't.
statutory responsibility.
Yeah, unfortunately, we didn't really have an opportunity to actually pay that much attention. You know, I saw them, yes, it's the word, we're going to wordsmith them later then. If we have to adopt them tonight, we'll have to take a really careful look at them
Well, we
later.
can't change them.
Yeah, we can edit them. I mean, we can.
No, you
Yeah, we
can't.
can. Oh, yes, we can.
No, the law says you cannot.
We're not adopting it. I mean, when we go and argue, I mean, at the end, you know how we make the corrections to Ms. Lemble's?
Those minutes can only be corrected tonight at this meeting.
Correct. And we'll do that later, when we actually deal
I
with it.
disagree with you, Madam Chair.
What do you mean?
I have asked that this discussion be postponed.
What discuss?
The minutes will be discussed at the end
The
of
minutes are
The
on
minutes will
there
be
for an
dis-
item to be discussed.
Later in the meeting.
But there is
and
a
we can
motion on
change
the
them.
floor, and I ask that that motion be called. Thank
Okay,
you.
what, please restate your motion.
I make a motion to adopt the agenda.
Oh, you just, okay.
Or
to
actually,
adopt the
I take that
agenda.
back. Mr. Roman made that motion. I
Okay.
seconded it.
Okay, so we're adopting the agenda.
What you asked for a minute.
Well, But we need to give Ms. Lemble some instruction on how to take minutes tonight. She's going to do it like normal. Okay, I got it. So we're going to adopt the agenda as, well, wait a minute. Because we will get to the minutes later. Okay. I got it.
I think that, if I may.
Sure.
So I want to be respectful of the Planning Commission, and I want to be respectful of the position of Secretary. I said I want to be respectful of the Planning Commission, and I want to be respectful of the position of Secretary. And I want to be respectful to Lisa Lemble so that she's not put in the middle. So I was aware, obviously, that this was going to be an issue tonight, and I have thought about it. I do think it's a legitimate request. I think the bylaws indicate from the Planning Commission that, in fact, the Secretary is responsible for the minutes and the policies related to those minutes. If you wish for Ms. Lemble to continue tonight as though you have done in the past, and that would be just for tonight until you can go forward with the conversation, I think it would be most appropriate to make that as a vote, so that because I think it is a legitimate request based on the bylaws, and I think it's a legitimate request, not saying that you all agree with it, I'm not saying I agree with it, I just think it's a legitimate request based on the bylaws and based on the fact that they would be a legal set of minutes in that way. And so if you want Lisa to do something different, I think you should inform her of that from a voting perspective today.
I'm misunderstanding what's going on here. Now, you just want to adopt the agenda as distributed, correct?
Mr. Roman made the motion, Madam
I made the
Chair.
motion.
Okay,
I feel
Mr.
we should
Roman.
adopt the agenda as issued at this point.
Okay,
And I support that.
okay. So that's the case. And then Mr. Dignan supported.
Correct.
And we will have a vote. All in favor of adopting the agenda as distributed, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. Okay, it's passed. So later on, when we actually get to the current minutes, it's my expectation that Ms. Lemble will not be taking minutes any differently than she's always taken minutes for us. We have had no change.
Is
that true?
Yes. Ms.
Okay.
Lemble has been requested to do something differently. Under the bylaws, that's a legitimate request. What I'm suggesting is that to both respect the Planning Commission and the role of Secretary, that if you wish Ms. Lemble to do something different from the request that she was provided, you should do that out of courtesy in a vote. Yes.
Okay. So let's make we have to add it to the agenda. Mr. Kuzno.
I'd like to know what the request was to Ms. Lemble. I'm not aware of it.
Yeah.
I can read you the email that I got.
Okay, please.
Yeah, Mark Stanalajczo emailed me today and wrote, hold it on here, I have to scroll down here. Said, I would like the format of the minutes to come into line with that of the township boards. I want to eliminate most all the text and verbiage.
Madam Chair, may I ask a question?
Yes.
Were there guidelines provided to Ms. Lemble by the Township Board as to what their minutes should reflect I don't know if that's a question for the township manager or for Ms. Lemble. I think it's more for the township manager.
Yeah, so when we had this conversation about a year and a half ago or so, the choice was to remove the notes. There were two sets of documents.
Right.
And so what we decided was we needed one set of documents, one official set of minutes. So we removed the note section. We kept the original minutes as though they were. They were not as long and detailed as the notes. They were obviously more than just, motion by Planning Commission member Cousineau, second by Dignan, so-and-so motion passes 5-0. They were more than that. But they weren't close to a transcript, so they were somewhere in the middle. And that's what the Township Board instructed Ms. Lemble to do, and she's been doing that for the last year and a half.
Okay.
And so if you read any of the Township Board minutes, that is essentially what Ms. Lemble has been doing.
There are
Did I-
still comments in there from the
Right.
the Board of Trustees and whoever else is speaking.
Right.
It's just not a
Not lengthy,
10-page
right.
document, it's a 3-page document,
Okay.
for example.
And I'm happy with that, Mr.
Madam Chair, under that premise, I have no problem with Ms. Lemble applying those same guidelines to the Planning Commission
Okay.
meeting, and I think that's what was instructed from the Secretary delegating the responsibility to her was to do that.
To do it as the board member.
I mean, that's my interpretation of the email she received.
Okay, let's have a motion that she prepare the
One more
Planning Commission
question,
minute.
one more.
Oh, go ahead, Mr. Cousineau.
Who decides which comments make it in and which ones don't make it in? Okay. Note that Ms. Lemble raised her hand.
Yeah.
You
Okay,
ultimately decide that
Right.
because you can edit the minutes at the next meeting.
true,
Right.
okay.
So
So
it's-
this is just a pragmatic question here. I believe we're in the 21st century, is that correct? Just to
Yes.
make sure.
Yeah?
Our laws now
Are any of these recorded things, the video and the audio, are those not also admissible in court or not?
No.
They're not
No,
admissible in
well,
court?
it's debatable. It is debatable, but the official record of the Planning Commission meeting is the minutes. It is not the tape.
Good take.
Wow.
Okay. All right, well, I will make a motion that Ms. Lemble prepare the minutes as Mr. Roman, sorry.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
it's out of order.
You're right.
It is out of order. It's not on the agenda. I think the instruction.
What-
Oh, go ahead, Mike.
I feel it can be brought up in another section of our agenda at this time. There's 2 other places it can come up. One being number 6, one being number 12, or excuse me, 11. One being reports. So I would choose one of those areas to make your motion.
Okay.
It was
If that helps.
correspondence.
It was correspondence.
correspondence.
All right, we'll do it under 6. Okay. We didn't all get the correspondence. All right, so we've approved the agenda, we're on to call to the public.